Hi, once again, everybody. Thank you for hopping on board with the latest edition of Gun on One. It is powered by the Inside the Birds Network. I'm Derrick Gunn. Well, one down, three to go. Goodbye, Packers. Hello, Rams. As the Eagles continue to inch closer to hopefully a Super Bowl appearance and, more importantly, a Super Bowl championship. For this particular Gun on One, I brought in a man I've known for a long time. I consider him a good friend. I love reading his stuff. Very animated, very colorful, very insightful. He is the Eagles beat writer for the Philly Voice, the one and only Jimmy Kempski. What's up, Jimmy?
Appreciate it, Derrick. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Hey, look, when we look back on this Eagles game against the Packers, what jumped out at you the most in a general sense first?
They're just really good. They just have a really good roster from top to bottom, and they're going to be hard to beat even if you don't get a stellar performance from JalenHurts. I didn't think Hurts played all that well.
Yeah.
And when you look at this Eagles team, I mean, you look at the league, just at the league wide, I would say that JalenHurts has the best quarterback situation in the NFL, and it's not particularly close. He's got the best offensive line in the NFL. He's got an elite wide receiver duo. He's got a good tight end in Dallas Goedert. He's got a running back who's going to win Offensive Player of the Year almost certainly, and he's got the number one defense in the NFL. So if he can't, there's a narrative right now kind of going that like he's along for the ride, and I don't think it's totally unfair, but it's also not a problem as long as they keep taking care of these opponents in the playoffs. And I think they have one more. They have one more game where he doesn't have to be stellar. But once you get past this one, this Rams game, if they do, that's when you need them to be great against the Lions, presumably if they beat the Commanders this weekend. And then, of course, whoever they face in the Super Bowl, if they get that far, they're going to need him to be great. So they got one more week for him to kind of figure things out. But, I mean, they're just a really, really good team from top to bottom.
I'm glad you brought up Mr. JalenHurts. We could say, well, he was basically off for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
To me, he didn't look rusty. Everybody kept wondering, would he look rusty? He didn't look rusty, but he didn't look comfortable, and he didn't look sure of himself.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that you can point to, I mean, there's several things you can point to. He's not turning the ball over.
No.
I mean, we saw some horrific quarterback performances over this weekend, starting on Saturday with Justin Herbert, and then on Sunday with Jordan Love, and then on Monday night with Sam Darnold topped everyone with the way that he played. Woo! So he's not turning the ball over, and that's, again, like I said, that's fine for now. And then also, as far as, I guess, apprehension about running with the ball coming off the concussion, didn't see that. So he is still running with the football and getting tackled, like not sliding when he's getting yards down the field. So I think I agree kind of with what you're saying. It wasn't so much rust. It's just, I think it's a continuation of what we've seen for most of the season, where he's hesitant to put the ball in harm's way. And I think that's something that's been coached into him this season. And again, it's fine for now, but at some point he's going to have to start taking chances and playing really, really well.
Do you think he's too careful with the football? Because I saw at least 9 plays where guys were open and he completely missed them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been all year. We've seen a lot of that for most of the regular season.
Right.
I mean, there are things that are open, and he's not letting it rip, so to speak. He's gonna have to start taking advantage of the opportunities that are there when you start getting the more elite teams in the NFL.
My colleague and co-host on my Bet Parks pre- and post-game show, Seth Joyner, said on our show on Sunday after the game, "Get off Jalen's neck. Get off his neck. He's not playing bad. He's not turning the football over. You people should appreciate what you have." Yeah. Should we?
I mean, there's some truth in that. Like I said, you're winning games the way that he's playing right now. They're 14-3. They're the 2 seed. They look like they might have the best roster in the NFL, at least after all these Detroit injuries, particularly on their defensive line. So I mean, there's something to be said for just not making mistakes. And there have been teams that have won Super Bowls that way by playing great defense and running the ball. That's more of like an old school approach. Maybe that'll work for them. And so, I mean, we'll see. But it is a formula that has worked in the past.
Give me your perspective of Kellen Moore's play calling.
uh,
How you chuckled first.
it's vanilla. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty clearly not. There's not a lot of, in my opinion, there's not a lot of creativity there. And again, I think it's fine. Like I think it's mostly fine. You'd probably like to see, him doing more fun things like Ben Johnson is in Detroit,
Yeah.
and scheming guys open and that kind of thing, which JalenHurts needs at this point, maybe. So, you can criticize that, but I think it's all kind of designed to not put the ball in harm's way and let the other facets of the team beat their opponents.
Do you think that Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni have scaled back the offense to make it more appealing to Jaylen?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but I mean, JalenHurts is as smart as they come, in my opinion. Like it's not an issue like that. I just think that when there's been some narratives that, and I think that there's some truth to it, that he needs to see it be open before he'll let it rip, as opposed to throwing with anticipation. And he's you look at his stats throwing from the pocket, and they're all very good. Like you look at him compared to other quarterbacks around the league, and they're very good. But I think it's because it's partly because he's got to see it before he'll throw it, and when he does see it open rather, and he throws, they're going to be high percentage throws. Whereas if it's not there, he'll leak out to the he'll leave the pocket and he'll run he'll run to the side and either throw it away or run with the football, and that kind of play is going to lead to better looking stats than what the eye test shows in the field.
I thought the Eagles got a huge gift on that game's opening kickoff. I thought Nixon recovered the football and the refs gave it to the Eagles.
Yeah, I actually thought I mean, the way I see it is if you fumble, you better be able to hand the football to the official, and he didn't. So it was a very controversial play, obviously. But I don't have any sympathy for the Packers or their fans on that one, because just don't fumble in the first place.
Right. Yeah, the Eagles won this game by double-digit points. But why do you think people are not satisfied? When you look at all the comments up and down social media, a lot of the fan base and even some of the media not satisfied with the way the Eagles won that game.
And it would have been 29-10 if Saquon didn't slide.
There you go.
They would have won by 3 scores. So yeah, I mean, I think that the unique thing about Philadelphia is they don't accept good football if they think that the team isn't playing up to its potential. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we're seeing here. I think they see that this is a Super Bowl caliber winning team. And I think they understand that if they continue to play this way in subsequent rounds, it's going to be harder to win those games against these elite opponents.
Since the bye week, this young defense has been playing lights out, except the one blip when they gave up 22 points against Washington.
Yeah.
Give me your top 5 things to you that have stood out about this defense. Basically, the youngest starting defense in the NFL.
Well, I mean, you got competency at the defensive coordinator position, whereas last year was a total dumpster fire. Yeah. And I think you've seen certain positional groups upgraded tremendously, because you have the linebackers last year who were Nick Morrow and Zach Cunningham.
Yeah.
You have Zach Bond suddenly turning into Mike Singletary out of nowhere, and Dean playing the way that he's obviously gone now, but playing the way that he did this year. And then I think you see the 2 major upgrades at corner with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean being notably better than James Bradbury and fill in the blank of whatever corner they're putting out there from week to week. Those positional upgrades have been enormous. And then I think we've seen Jalen Carter take the next step in his progression, unblockable at times in games, doesn't have the stats that are, eye-popping, but he's just been great this year. But again, for me, it all comes back to Vic Fangio and the job that he's done and the way that he's gotten the defensive players to buy into a scheme, and that they didn't look great early in the year. Like their first 4 games of the season before that bye, that defense did not look good. And then once they got past the bye, things started to gel a little bit, which isn't out of the out of the ordinary. It's actually not uncommon for his defenses over the years. And I think, once they started to gel, it's really come together. I would have never, ever foreseen that they were going to be the number one defense this year. No way. But they've gotten really good performances, and there's an adult in the room there now.
All right, 2 questions in one. Number one, how big of a loss is Nakobe Dean? And number two, who would you replace him with, Oren Burks or a young Trotter?
We haven't seen much of Trotter other than in the preseason games, and we take a look at him in training camp. I liked what I saw from him in training camp and in the preseason games, around the football a lot. I think what they like about Oren Burks is that he's athletic and he's an okay tackler. And I think what they like about Trotter is that he's got instincts. He's not a big guy. He's not going to wow anyone with his athleticism, but he's actually not that different of a player from Nakobe and from like TJ Edwards, for example, who, sort of relied on their instincts and their smarts. So I think he's that kind of. I think if the Eagles could take Oren Burks' athleticism and put it into and combine that with Jeremiah Trotter's instincts, then they really have something there. But I actually kind of think they're leaning Trotter. I think they're gonna have a rotation. Like both of those guys are gonna play in relief of Nakobe, and they're gonna get a chance to see what they can do in this divisional round game, and then maybe pick one going forward thereafter. But yeah, I think we're going to see a rotation there between those two guys, and Jeremiah Trotter will be part of the mix. I think he's going to play some snaps in this divisional round game.
Yeah, and Fangio said they're not afraid to put Trotter in there.
Yeah. He's played rookies all year. He's played, Cooper DeJean. He's played Quinion Mitchell. He's played Jalen Hunt over Bryce Huff. So yeah, he hasn't been afraid to throw the rookies into the fire.
Since Brandon Graham has gone down, they have not had the definitive edge rusher that can put consistent pressure on a quarterback. How much of a hindrance could that be as they continue to go along, especially if you get past the Rams? You're either going to get, Detroit or Washington. We know what Jared Goff can do with that offense in their building, and we've seen what Jaden Daniels can do up and down the field. I mean, the kid doesn't play like a rookie.
Yeah. I mean, they could struggle to get after. So the way that I look at the Eagles, it's difficult to pinpoint. Now they're gonna target the linebackers, whoever they play, but it's difficult to really pinpoint anything for opponents to specifically target. But the one positional group that I think isn't as good as the rest, particularly on defense, are the edge rushers. And it's not that like opponents can really target those guys unless they're just really bad against the run, which I don't think is the case in here. But if they're unable to get pressure, I guess maybe a subtle way that they can attack that is to just leave offensive tackles on an island, and that, as the Eagles have done for years and years. And then that opens up, a lot of things that you can do offensively. But I think Josh Sweat has had a decent season. Bryce Huff has been a complete bust as a free agent signing. Jalen Hunt is young. He's gonna, he's gonna come along slowly. And I mean, it's a group that could struggle to get after whoever they're playing.
You and I have covered this team a long time, and when Howie identifies a player they want to sign, he doesn't hesitate to sign him.
Yeah.
Are you surprised we're not hearing more rumors about them trying to sign Zach Bond? Because you cannot let that man get out of the building after the season.
Yeah, I mean, especially now with Nakobe Dean's injury is bad.
Yes.
The tailbone tendon is as bad as it gets. Like, there are a lot of guys that never get their explosiveness back after that injury. That's like way worse than an ACL, is what any doctor will tell you. So that's not great. And if you're going to be without Nakobe Dean, then yeah, you better be able to sign Zach Bond back, because we're looking at another situation where they could be down their two starting linebackers from a very successful season, like we saw with TJ Edwards and Kaiser White a couple years ago, and then they both leave in free. And that's a different situation that year, because they had like 12 good players that were gonna make some kind of money in free agency. So there's no way they're ever gonna keep all those guys. This year it's a little different. They have 4 guys that are gonna make money, whether it's in Philly or elsewhere. It's Zach Bond, it's Milton Williams, it's Mekhi Gardner, and it's who am I missing here? Milton Williams, Mekhi Gardner. And Josh Sweat. So those four guys they're gonna make money this offseason. I think they'll prioritize Bond and Milton, and I think they're just gonna have difficulty re-signing Mekhi Becton because they're already paying a lot of money to 3 offensive linemen. Yeah. And the 4th is coming this offseason with Cam Jurgens. And Mekhi Becton's going to be a hot name on the free agent market because there are just so many teams around the league that are desperate for offensive line starters. So I think they're just going to have trouble matching whatever anyone's going to offer him. And then I think Sweat is gone because they made him take a pay cut. So he's going to be eager to see what he can make in free agency. So I think that the 2 guys they're really going to target. And I wouldn't rule out Sweat coming back, but I think the 2 guys that they'll really hone in on are Zach Bond and Milton Williams. And I think both of those players and their representation are smart to wait until the offseason because they're both going to get big offers around the league. And I think you maximize, your earning power if you wait.
Do you think there's a possibility Mekhi Becton may give this team a family discount? When you go back to training camp before the season began, he talked about how he had lost his interest basically playing football when he was with the Jets. He had no desire to play, but he gets here, and all of a sudden he's rejuvenated. And let's face it, we sit back and we always look at athletes across the board in every sport, and we think that they're always going to go after the most money.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case with some players. When you feel you have a fit and when you feel that you have a family environment where you can thrive in, sometimes that almighty dollar is not the ulterior motive to continue playing.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with that sentiment. And Jeff Stoutland has, coached him into a top tier kind of right guard in this league. And there's the argument that, maybe if you're the Eagles, you sign him to a big deal with the idea that he's your right guard of the present and your right tackle of the future whenever Lane Johnson retires. I don't know about that. I think he's just going to be a guard for the rest of his career. I think he's found a home there and he's good. So why mess with that? So I see the argument, but ultimately, what's the difference between what he's going to get offered and what the Eagles can actually afford? So if they can find middle ground there, then he could be back. But again, what's that difference? So these guys have, 1 or 2 opportunities sometimes to, secure the bag, if you will. And this is his coming up this offseason. So, I think it would take, I think it would take a disappointing group of offers around the league for him to stay, which is possible. It's possible. They've seen that before, like James Bradbury when he was going to be a free agent. They were just resigned to let him go. Ultimately, it turned out bad that they brought him back, but the offer thought they were going to be, and they wound up bringing him back on a reasonable deal. So maybe we see that with Mekhi Becton.
Go back to Jaylen for just a moment. When you talk about Jaylen against the blitz for most of the season, his numbers have been impeccable against the blitz. He made the right read on the hitch pass to Dallas Goedert for the touchdown. But there was one series in particular, Green Bay blitzed on 3 consecutive downs, and he had problems, and he threw the ball away 3 times. And once Green Bay ramped up their blitz for the most part in the game, he had problems against that. Could that be a problem moving forward? I mean, again, I have to reiterate, he did well against the blitz much of the season, but in this particular game when Green Bay hit him with the blitz, for the most part, he did not handle it well.
Yeah, think about the Bucs game last year, they were just sending blitz after blitz after blitz. I mean, they saw Wink Martindale and the Giants do that late in the season to him, and that worked. And then Todd Bowles just blitzed the crap out of him in the playoff game, and it was all familiar. Like the blitz would come, he'd roll out to the right, nothing be there, he'd throw it away. There's just a lot of that in that game, and there was some of that in the Packers game as well. But they worked hard on that this offseason. They knew that teams are going to come out and try to blitz him a lot this season, and that was a major focus of their training camp and the OTAs and just their entire off season to get that fixed. And I think largely they did. And this maybe there is a little bit of a quote unquote rust factor here where he's got to settle back in, seeing, live bullets and exotic blitz schemes. Maybe that takes, I don't know, a game, a half game, kind of get back after missing 3 weeks or whatever. So I do feel more confident in his ability to handle the blitz this year, certainly, than I did a year ago.
Yeah, I thought it was a class move by Saquon when he bust through the Packers line late in the game. He could have taken it to the house easily. He sits down. I mean, I know you cover the games. You're always there. Were you surprised he didn't just decide to take it to the house and at least take it down to the 1 yard line and sit down and pad his stats?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Devontae wasn't happy about. Devontae said, "Come over here. Let me give you an earful for doing that." But yeah, he's. I think the regular season plus playoffs rushing
Yeah.
record is Terrell Davis is like 2,400 something yards.
Yeah.
He's got a shot at that as long
Yeah.
as they keep winning. So we may see that sit down. We may see those yards that it would have been like 60 yards or something like that if
Yeah.
he hadn't sat down there. So maybe that'll be the difference between him breaking that record as opposed to not.
All right, you're at the game. You go to the practices. I'm still sitting here shocked that AJ only had one catch for 10 yards in that game. A lot of people wonder if the knee is bothering him. I know he talked to all you guys and say, "Hey, the knee's fine." But you watched him run routes in that game, and you watched him block in that game. Did he look like he was 100%?
Yeah, I didn't have him and Devontae having, what was it? I think like 7 combined targets in that game. I didn't have that on my bingo card.
Yeah.
But that's what happened in that game. And I don't know that I didn't look that closely. Honestly, that's an interesting point. I didn't look that close if he looked gimpy or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, and you look at this Packers team, they're without their best cornerback in Jair Alexander. I assumed that they were going to throw. I mean, Alexander followed him in the week 1 matchup in Brazil, followed him all over the field. And they didn't have a guy that can do that. Like Keyshawn Nixon, I like him as a football player, but I don't like him as a CB1. So I thought I thought it was going to be a big time AJ game, and it just simply wasn't.
What were your thoughts on AJ sitting there reading the book on the sideline? I mean, to be honest with you, I've covered this game a long time. I have never ever seen that before in a game.
Well, what I thought was funny about that in particular, like you got a close up of his book when he tweeted it out, and that is worn down. Like that book has traveled a lot with him and has been opened a lot clearer. You can see how worn down. He's got highlighted passages in there.
Yeah.
So like he really takes that book seriously, apparently. And it's funny that the players knew about the book, but we somehow didn't. Like he said that he's read the book on the sideline before.
I've never seen that.
I feel like we would have seen that if he had.
Because the cameras don't miss anything.
Always all over everything. Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's like 20 cameras on pointing at things on the field. But yeah, I mean, whatever. Whatever works for him. God bless. And if that's what makes him the player he is, then keep at it.
What do you think? What do you think of AJ in general? I mean, every time I talk to somebody inside, everybody loves AJ in the building. But he has had some controversial moments this season when talking to the media and revealing some of his frustrations at times. Do you think in any way, shape, or form he's a negative on this team? Because I have never heard anybody say anything negative about him.
No, he's a really good dude. In fact, the media voted on the quote-unquote good guy award.
Okay.
It went to Jordan Mailata. But AJ finished second, and he was my vote. AJ was my top vote.
Okay.
He finished second in voting, and Saquon Barkley was third. So Mailata, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley is the good guys that are, that help the media be able to do their job. So I don't think AJ's beef is necessarily with the beat writers that cover the day to day. I think it's maybe a little bit radio and, an occasional
national perspective,
local columnist or something like that. But I think he understands that the people that cover the team like every day in, day out, we aren't bashing him for really no good reason. And he's a good dude and he's an awesome player. And I think, and as you said, like the players in the locker room, they all like, Joe, man, they all love that guy.
Hey, do you think Nick Sirianni has scaled back his emotions and his passions? I mean, he's been called out a number of times, and to me, he's looked a little bit more subdued on the sidelines.
Yeah, it's been a little while since he has had an outburst, and I think that's a conscious thing that he has done. They've had a lot of big wins in recent weeks, and normally you see him screaming and hollering after those and screaming at opposing players on the field, and he's dialed that back. And I think the reason why is because we saw guys like Jalen Carter reacting on the field poorly. So more recently, CJ, I guess, getting thrown out of a game for saying whatever he said to in that Washington game. So it's like, if the parent is behaving poorly, then this, I don't know if this is a great analogy, but then the children behave poorly too. So, I think there's actually been something to that where he's been told, calm down, Nick.
Playoffs. We're talking about playoffs. You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning in the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, the Eagles are plus 450 to win the Super Bowl. What do you say, Birds fans? New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BIRDSPREGAME. That's code BIRDSPREGAME, all one word, for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in New York. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
It's funny. The two biggest things that came out of this game were not the Eagles winning the game, but AJ reading the book and, of course, the fan who got caught on camera berating the one Packers fan. He's been banned. Speaking of that, he's been banned. He's going to be banned from Eagles games.
Yep.
We see this across the NFL. This stuff happens all the time, fights breaking out. Do you think the Eagles have handled that properly in terms of banning him and, of course, apologizing to the female fan in terms of giving her Packers gear as part of the apology?
Yeah, I mean, there are bad people everywhere. So, I mean, it's going to happen in games when people are just loaded at the game too. Yeah. And for a 4:30 playoff game, there's, I get the game pretty early and people are like hammered in the parking lot, especially for a playoff game. So, alcohol and poor behavior kind of go hand in hand. Now, I don't find the victims here wholly sympathetic, because apparently this guy went in there with the purpose of trying to find Eagles fans to berate him. Like they went that purpose. There's a lot of social media stuff floating around about that guy or whatever, but certainly that fan that called that woman some vulgar names. Grow up, dude.
All right, so up next they face the Rams coming up. Man, the Rams went through Minnesota like a buzzsaw. How surprised were you at the way the Rams were able to handle Minnesota? Because Minnesota was the favorite in that game, no question about it. I mean, Sam Darnold didn't know what hit him. He was sacked 9 times. The Vikings only had 9 points. They're a high-scoring offense. Yeah. And the Rams just walked up and down the field on this team. This is not the same Rams we saw back in November.
Their defense is playing a lot better than it did when the Eagles faced them in Week 12. And actually, if you take out their Week 18 game, which they curiously rested starters in that game against the Seahawks, and they gave up, I think, like 30 points in that game. But if you take that game out, their last 4 games, they've allowed single-digit points in all 4 of them. So they're playing well. And you look at their roster and you go, a lot to attack there. Like their corners, I think, are ripe for attacking. Their linebackers, I think, are ripe for attacking with Dallas Goedert. They do have a young, talented defensive line with Byron Young and with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and the other defensive tackle's name is escaping me at the moment. But they get after the quarterback. Where you're concerned if you're a Rams fan is they got pushed around in that Week 12 game.
Yes.
He had 255 yards. He had a 70-yard run in that game and a 72-yard run. And if you take those carries out, he still had like 24 carries for like 20 yards or whatever it was. So the Eagles offensive line just pushed them around in that game. So that's spoiler, the Rams are not entire focus, but their main focus is going to slow down the Eagles' run game, and they're going to try to make JalenHurts beat them.
Yeah, and when you look at the Rams' defensive front, it's a smaller front.
Yes.
It's a smaller, fast front. I don't know if they can stand up to that Eagles' massive offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are going to try to run the ball, obviously, and the Rams are going to try to stop that primarily, and that's what we're going to see. And whoever is successful there, I mean, it's not surprising that the Rams' offense has been playing well lately, because you have Matthew Stafford, who, in my opinion, is very clearly a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. They have a very good wide receiver tandem in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is a really good player. They got Higbee back. Higbee's playing. He played well. He had like 5 catches for 50-something yards in that first half. Before he left, he's going to be Sean McVay said he's probably going to play. So they have legit weapons in their passing offense. But yeah, defensively, they were really bad all year, and they've figured something out over the last month, and it's a tricky opponent coming up. Like that, by what, like 6? And that's kind of a big line, I guess, for a divisional round game. But yeah, I mean that they've shown something over the last month that they didn't show all season.
And I'll tell you what, when I watched Stafford, man, was he getting that ball out of his hands quick. Yes. I mean, it was like 1, 2, 3 throw. And when he gets in a rhythm, Stafford is as dangerous as any quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a ring. So and he got that ring basically just it was him and Cooper Kupp that won that game against the Bengals, whatever that was. So yeah, I mean, he's been there and he's done it. And it's not like you're facing some second-year quarterback or like a Herbert or a Sam Darnold here. This is a legit quarterback that can win playoff games.
They're talking about the possibility of snow on Sunday. Do you think that could be a factor in how the Rams try to approach this game? I mean, guys coming from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast, 60, 70 degrees out there. It's going to be like in the low 30s here with possibility of snow.
Yeah, that's a team that likes to run the ball. Like the Packers, for example. Everyone from that Shanahan tree, they all like those. Yeah. All those guys like to run the ball. So, spoiler, they're going to run it, and they maximize the passing game off the run game with play action and such. And obviously, their claim to fame is the use of motion, the use of pre-snap motion. Mm-hmm. I actually was just looking at that game earlier today. Puka had 9 catches in that game.
Or $117 or something like that?
Yeah, 117, I think it was. And eight of those receptions, he was in motion before the play. So, they found something that was working against the Eagles in that game. It just wasn't enough because the Eagles overwhelmed them otherwise. But they got to figure that out. The Eagles got to figure that out in this game, how to deal with the motion. There's a lot of plays in particular, like he was just kind of coming across the formation behind the line of scrimmage and just leaking out in the flat and getting it open. And then that guy's really good at getting yards after the catch. Isn't really known for that necessarily, but he is. So yeah, I mean they got a big challenge in trying to slow that guy down.
I was reading one of your recent articles where you said the 5 keys when the Eagles have the football. Can you share those, please?
Yeah, well, it's Saquon, and I guess it would have been AJ and Devontae against their corners, which I think – so their corners are interesting because they lost Darian Kendrick for the year in training camp. He was their CB1 essentially. And otherwise they have Darius Williams, who's been a starter all year, and Kobe Durant started for them most of the year. Kobe Durant got benched, and Akello Witherspoon took over for him in recent weeks. He's played well enough. Akello Witherspoon got hurt in the Vikings game, thigh injury. It's actually either a thigh or a
thigh.
It's probably a hamstring. So he didn't practice. Well, they didn't practice today, but it was their estimation is that he wouldn't have if they practiced. So he may play, he may not. And Darius Williams and Kobe Durant, if they have to play, that's a really small cornerback tandem. So Darius Williams is 5'9", Kobe Durant is 5'11". So if you want to take shots down the field and throw up 50-50 balls, AJ and Devontae should win those against these guys if you get those opportunities. So I expect to see that if those 2 guys are starting. Now, Akello Witherspoon, I should note, he's got size, but AJ Brown wrecked him when he played for the Steelers in 2022. If you recall, like he had 3 touchdowns in that game, and he had one of them, like he caught a touchdown. He did like the, too small, like the hand, like the too small to guard me, that. And then his last touchdown is when he went like, I got you and I got you. There's two guys that were trying to cover him.
Yeah.
And Kellen Witherspoon was the guy on the wrong end of those two deep throws. So he's beaten that guy badly in the past. So that's a concern for the Rams in this game. And so I guess my other ones were Dallas Goedert working against their linebackers. Their linebackers, per Pro Football Focus, have given up like 85% completion percentage to the opposing players. So those guys, I think you can attack. And then, the offensive line, I think, is kind of secondary to, because, you look at the Eagles offensive line, you never really worried about them matching up against whoever they're playing. Mm-hmm. But I think in this case, what we saw in that Vikings game, so the three quarterbacks in the NFL that hold the ball longer than any other quarterbacks in the league, the number one is Lamar Jackson, number two is JalenHurts, and number three is Sam Darnold. So we saw what they did to Darnold in that game, and I think what the Eagles have here is tape on how the Rams wanted to attack a quarterback that holds on to the ball for a long time. Mm-hmm. They'll have tape on what they're trying to do in this game. I don't think their game plan will change all that much for another quarterback in Hurts, who also holds on to the ball for a long time. So I think the matchup of that really good Rams defensive line versus this Eagles offensive line is secondary to giving Jalen Hurts the opportunity to get the ball out quickly and not take all the sacks that Darnold did in that game.
Do you think it's going to be a closer game this time around? Do you think eventually the Eagles are going to wear them out and it's going to be another rout like the first time?
I don't know if it's going to be a rout, but yeah. I do think the Eagles are the very clearly superior team. And, actually, one of the other five things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Jake Elliott is a concern. Missed another one.
Missed an extra point.
The Packers missed the PAT. So pregame, I was watching him, and he pushed a couple to the right.
Yeah.
And in the game, he pulled it to the left. So he's spraying it a little bit, which is a concern. So I don't know. We'll see if he can get that fixed. But, yeah, that remains a concern as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, you know what I miss most about Jimmy Kempski?
What's that?
This season, I haven't seen the multitude of stick figure caricatures that you're so famous for. What the heck happened, man? Did you retire them?
No, I still do them every now and again, but you're right. Like they have tailed off significantly in the past, really like the past 2-3 years or whatever. Yeah. Not for any reason, just other than, I don't know, maybe I've become a little more lazy in my beat writer. No, I won't say that. I work hard, but yeah, no, I don't know. I feel like they have to be really funny for me to do them, or I just don't do them anymore.
Yeah. All right, hey Jimmy, thank you so much, man, for taking time for a gun on one. I appreciate it, brother, and don't be surprised if I hit you again down the road somewhere.
Anytime, man. Appreciate it.
All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Gun on One, powered by the Inside the Birds Network. For Jimmy Kempski, follow him and read his stuff on the Philly Voice. I love what he does. Always have, always will. For Jimmy Kempski, I'm Derrick Gunn. We'll talk to you next week after they pound the Rams into submission and get ready for the NFC Championship game against the Washington Commanders or the Detroit Lions. Until then, so long, everybody.